Okay, well, I guess this may be a little backwards, but I thought I would start off, give a kind of an introductory wing video that I haven't done before with showing a wing I just finished. So this is like my 7th build. So kind of got this wing building down. It took me, I think, about 36 hours, something like that. Total, with all the cleaning of the spars and everything. But anyway, I just thought I'm just going to run around and just kind of wing this and just kind of show some things, and you can look at it first or go back and refer to some of the things on the build. This is an EX3, so it's a little bit different, and that the EX3 has this bigger solid, almost solid false spar, false flap spar back here, and then the rear spar is actually larger than the EX2 in here. So this is a larger, this is off of the X Cub, I believe. The leading edge skins are a little different in that they wrap completely around. They're a thicker metal, and they wrap completely around, attach on the top and attach on the bottom also, whereas the EX2s are only partial, like the last one. You can see here, the last one here is the most outboard wing skin on the EX3 is open, as you can see underneath there, whereas you see the rest are all solid and wrapped completely around the spar. And like I say, they're a thicker material, so they have a tendency not to tin can as much as the EX2 ones do. So anyway, here you can see the wiring coming out. This has the G3X gap 26 with the angle of attack and PITOT. So one of these is a PITOT for the air speed, and the other one's for the angle of attack. These are the wires for the strobe and the wingtip lights for the strobe and navigation lights, and the one for the landing light, and one for the stall warning. This is something new. These two wires here, they were kind of short. These two wires, I don't label that in positive. There's a positive and a negative, and these are going down because I'm doing an IFR, my first IFR panel. And these tubes, you can see, run down the inside of the spar, come across, go through the grommets that you install here, and then come around. They back ordered the bracket, my PITOT tube bracket, which goes right there in those 4 holes, so you can screw those in from here, from this side. So I can't cover this, so they back ordered that, and they back ordered the cable, which goes across here and goes to this attached piece here where the pulley will go to, and then come back across to here. So in any case, that's kind of how the wiring was. So you can see there's a positive and a negative for that PITOT tube heat, and then see how long I leave these cables. Leave them, you got plenty of this tubing. Leave it long, because when you put the PITOT tube mast in here, when you go inside later, there'll be a cover, an inspection cover here, and you go up into there, and you'll have to do the connections up inside the wing. And if you make it long enough, you can pull those out and do them outside the wing, where you connect the tubes to the actual PITOT tube. Those are metal, little bendable aluminum tubes that come up from the PITOT tube. So if you leave them long enough, you can pull it out and do the connections outside, and then you can just shove it back up inside the wing, and it's a whole lot better. So anyhow, as going around, we can see the end pieces that we put on here. There's some talk about in the manual about they changed the bolts. The bolts that go on these here are 6As, AN 174, 6A, I believe. They used to be in the old manuals 7A, so a little longer bolt with a bigger shoulder. The trick with these is on any bolt, and that's why the manual says if they call out for a bolt with a washer under the head, then it's okay to add more washers. But if they call a bolt out and does not call for a washer under the head, you cannot put a washer under the head. And the reason is because these bolts have a shoulder. That's the solid part of the bolt, and it goes through. Well, I got it clarified. I'm not an engineer by any means, but Cub Crafters is. So I would have thought that the shoulder had to go all the way through, like for example, in this part, all the way through from here, all the way through to here, to where the threads are. Well, that's not true. They said the shoulder has to go through the last piece of the junction for shear strength. So this is the last joint, which is this part here going to here. So as long as the shoulder goes beyond this part, they didn't say how far, it doesn't have to go all the way to the outside edge of this material, in other words. So as long as the shoulder is long enough to go through that last shear point, you're okay, okay? So in that case, the 6A bolts will work, okay? They would not work if you needed it to go all the way through. So they changed it from a 7A to a 6A over here. The 7As work okay, but they're a little bit short in some areas, but they still work. You can stack up as many, or not as many as you want, but you can stack up washers on this side also if you need to. Most people know that the washers are, for example, if this is a 416 washer, a 416L is what we call a half washer. So it's half the thickness of the regular washer. A 10, a 960-10, a 960-10L would be half the thickness. So 2 L's equals 1 regular washer. So you can stack them up however you need to. But you see, you want to just make sure you end up with these threads from having at least 1 and not more than 3. So just play with the washers. And you want to be sure with shoulder bolts that if the shoulder extends out beyond this last part, you've got to put enough washers on it so that the thread doesn't bottom out on the bolt. So that's pretty much it. You know, it talks about how you have to ream these out with the reamers. They sent you a couple of big Clecos in the kit that goes through these to help you hold those in place while you get the reaming, you know, started, and torque them up. The torques, in the new manual, I know they took the torques away. They used to tell you what the torques were, but something I keep is a chart up here. I've actually got pictures of this in the forum, and it's kind of cool. I just got little cheat sheets. AN3 is, any of the 3s are 40, 4s are 90, 5s are 180, 6s are 250, which is 21 foot-pounds. Because on that one, I have to use a foot-pound wrench, and that's the size of the bolt. The 4s are 1/4 inch, and then those are 5/16. So then I keep this is a really good chart. And like I say, you can go run a copy of the pictures I have in the forum if you want to get a picture of this too. I think Cleveland Tools sent me this when I bought a bunch of stuff from them. But it's pretty cool. I use this a lot. It basically shows the size, like a number 30 drill bit. It's a 0.125 inch, okay? And these are your letter heads over here. And this shows regular decimal, and it shows you the equivalents. So anyway, that's good to look at. If you measure a bolt you need to drill a hole for, you can look at this, measure the bolt, and then you can look at this chart and see which one comes closest to making it. And of course, I use the digital calipers a lot. So a good set of those will work good here. I keep a printed list of my forum posts right here handy. So I've got an index. So when I need to look at something, how to do something, which I use my post to build because I'm old and can't remember anything. Keep my laptop up here, and I keep it on my, see there, my forum post. The reason I do the forum post isn't for you, it's for me, because I'm too old to remember stuff. So these are basically my notes. The new manuals, I put them all together. There's all the nuts and bolts. Here's my packing list, and as I explained in the forum, the first thing I go through is highlight them. I leave the ANs natural, and I go back and take all the MS numbers and highlight them with this, and I take the HDW numbers, and it's very easy to quickly look through and find a part. So when the manual calls for a part, then I can go over to this first. If it's a tote part, like a nut or a bolt or whatever. The washers you use so much, I leave the washer one out just right here because I use them so much. It's just sitting right there. But I give myself some note hints. 526s are here, 507s are here, nuts are here. And the rest of the stuff's pretty self-explanatory. Then I'm right beside it, I have the packing list, which I've gone through, which I do highly recommend that you go through when you first get the kit. Cub Crafters is excellent on sending parts. You never have a problem with them saying, no, I'm not going to send you that part. If you're short one or whatever, that's fine. But I do make a good inventory of everything. The first thing I do when I unload a crate, you can see here I've gone through and checked them off as every single part. Okay, for this whole sheet. I go through, and then when I'm done, there's some that aren't okay. BO, back ordered, okay? Need 2 back ordered, you know. So then I keep all those separate, then I just send them a list and saying, here's the stuff that was either back ordered on my packing list, which they'll take care of that. They keep a back order and they'll ship you the back orders automatically, but I still make a list of them just for me. So I do it on a spreadsheet. And then sometimes you'll find some that were missing. See if I can see one. I'll just be, see, missing. So what that says is there, it says that the flat washer, that number there, needed 4, and it says they got 4. See, it says shipped 4, wrong, there was none in there, so it shipped 0. So I just sent them a note that they're missing. Same thing, they said they shipped it, but it wasn't here. So I just sent them a list of it, and they'll get it out to you. The reason I do this inventory is not because I don't trust Cub Crafters to give me the part. The reason is I want to know what parts I'm missing when I start so they can go ahead and get them here. There's nothing more frustrating than to pull all your parts and get ready to do a section, and then you go, man, I'm short that, I'm short that, I'm short that. And so you end up putting everything on hold and waiting for a week for them to get you a part. This kit includes every part needed to build this airplane except for your paint and your batteries and ELT. Anything else they supply. They even supply the stripes on the airplane, the decals, and everything, your data plate, all that. So if you need something, have them send it to you. I don't go buy it. I've never bought a part for any of these airplanes. I've always had Cub Crafters give me the part, and they do, no problems, okay? Just be sure that you're organized first. If I can't find a part, if it's not in the totes, for example, then go to that packing list. Sometimes they'll send you stuff separate, like high wing gross kit. Go back through here then and check. These are have each one. This is page 1 of 1, so there's only one page of this particular bundle 1. And then they're in alphabetical order. So if it's an SC something, just go through the SCs right quick, go, okay, SC 32, whatever, it's not there. Then you can go to the next page. And you can check each packing slip to be sure that part isn't on that packing slip, because it could be separate in a separate little bag that came with the kit, okay? So if it's a little bolt, for example, if it's not in here, not in the totes where most of the bolts are, before you call Cub Crafters, go to the appropriate packing list and see if it's there. Watch for pre-cover stuff too. Your pre-cover information here, like this is a lot of pre-cover stuff. It'll have little bags of stuff in the pre-cover also, so it might be something related to that. So that's just kind of a way of being organized, make your inventory, have Cub Crafters go ahead and get the stuff you know you're missing on the way, okay? So that was the spars. We talked about cleaning the spars. You can see I'm getting ready today. I'm actually going to start the right wing. There's the spars I just kept underneath here out of the way. Pretty nice. I'll set them up here, and then I'll probably spend a couple of hours. Any scratch on a spar that you can run your fingernail on and it'll catch needs to be sanded off. Now you can use the burgundy like this. I keep some around all the time. You can use the burgundy, almost like Velcro. You can use the burgundy, you know. See how that does? It kind of makes it nice. Aluminum is really easy to do. Okay, I'm going to do that later because that's where we're going to start the first fabric patch. But you know, you can do that on the spars. You can kind of see where I rubbed it along there, and I kind of go along the whole spar and do a little bit. If you go up and down on the spar, you'll see a lot of difference. If you try to go sideways with the grain, kind of, it doesn't do as much. So sanding, you can go up and down like that. The Spar caps, the tops here, those are where you want to really be careful of. That's where the strength of the Spar is. The webbing on the side is not that big a deal. You can see we put bolts and stuff through these and rivets. Okay, so we're going to clean them up good, make sure there's no scratches or scuffs in them that'll catch our fingernail. There's a lot of stuff that looks like big scratches. You run across them, you can't even feel them because that material is so soft that it scratches quite easy. So we've laid the Spars out. Once we get them cleaned up, then we'll stand them up, put the rest of these attached fittings in. You'll notice that all the attached fittings, that the parts will always go where the tube holder is going to be on the bottom half. So if this one's pretty easy to see. It's a lot longer on one end than the other. Some of them are pretty close. Let's see. Well, these are all big on this side. On this side, some are much shorter. See, like that. So to find out which end is the shorter end, I just make a little mark in the halfway part of that tube, and I measure with the electric digital caliper, bottom to top, and it just be that's just not much, maybe an eighth or a quarter of an inch difference between the distance between there and there. But then I just kind of put a little arrow bottom, so make sure I know that's the bottom. You're installing with the bottom, on there. And rivets, you kind of see here how everything is. The forum post, I go kind of step by step with most of this. The new manuals are very good. The manuals were mostly made, or a lot made, from my forum post and the information I gave cub crafters on errors or places where it needed additional information. And I really followed it the first time doing this wing build, and I was really impressed. They really did a pretty good job on it. So a lot of my forum posts are kind of outdated now because they're covering the old manual and all the problems, whereas the new manual has addressed most of that. Okay, so you can see these are the jury strut mounts. They're that's the rear one. Now we're using Cherry Max rivets. They used to use regular hard rivets that you hand squeeze. Now they're just pulling Cherry Maxes through there for that one. Well, I guess for all three of them, for all of them. The other side has the tall one. We used to squeeze those two rivets and then pull a Cherry Max there, but now we're using Cherry Max all the way. Coming along through the back, we'll see the cap strips here. And I go into a lot of detail on the forum. All these rivets now, all the ones I've gotten are already pre-installed on the leading edge skin. In this bay, these are going to be for the fuel tank later. And they're installed already on the false flap Spar. So back across here, these are already installed. We're going to install all these in the cap strips. After we install them, we're going to install these additional ones in the corner. We're going to install all this on this cap strip. Okay, they came pre-drilled, I think. Yeah, they came pre-drilled. These came pre-drilled. I think we just had to countersink them and install the nut plates, okay? So you'll see in the manual, that's one of the areas that they fixed. We have to add these corner ones, okay? So we're gonna add this, we have to find this location and actually install it. These are already, the holes are already pre-drilled. We just countersunk them and installed the nut plates inside of them. You can see which side it is. This lip is going down right here on this cap strip. The rivets, this is a double rib underneath here. So this inside, or outboard rather, rib is taking the countersunk Cherry Max rivets that we installed it with. And this side is actually going into the outside of the double rib. All the double ribs I've got now have been, in the last couple of kits, they're pre-making these or pre-putting the two ribs together at the factory. The manual tells you about how to do them yourself, but I think if you're getting a recent kit, you won't have to do that. If you've got an older kit, you might have to still put them together, either with rivets or with glue, either way. And you can see that this cap strip came all the way down to here. I talk about that in the forum post. Please be sure and follow it, because I get into very detail. These were very kind of bad areas in the manual before that I addressed in a lot of detail. And coming down here, following this rib, you can see the bottom cap strip. You can see where it ends. And I tell you in the forum, we're going to take a straight edge and run it down here on this back side of this rib. And right there, where this should come back down and touch it right there, because your cover is going to come down and go around there. So it's just, they actually give you a measurement now from the back of that rib to there, which works out right. But what it basically is we're just running a straight edge down through here. We want that cap strip on the bottom to hit it. You'll see that bottom cap strip. You see there's a couple of holes. They just make a generic cap strip. It works for both sides. So there's some holes that aren't going to hit anything, and I explained that. And then the rest of these are rivets going in from the bottom, and this stops here. That's why I explained about where we don't put one on this top end, or the one that would go in this double rib on this side, but we don't put it because later we're going to run the skin around, and it's going to come over, and we're going to attaches everything, see, all together right there. So there's no need to put the cap strip. But here you can kind of see the cap strip, and it's just double rows, double rib there, so it's double rows of rivets going into both of the center ribs that are in there, okay? When you put the fuel tanks in, you can see how close they are. Here, this one's actually up underneath this lip a little bit. They talk about putting these in the braces. These braces here are against this rib, and it's just a temporary thing to hold it there when you pull the fabric. So what happens when we put the fabric, it's going to come across here, and we're going to wrap it around and tuck it under this lip. So this is going to hold the end of the fabric. There are no fabric rivets in this one because you don't need to, because it's going to go underneath here and glue. Okay? But everywhere else, see, we have fabric rivets, and all these coming down through here. Okay? So when you go to shrink the fabric, you put your iron on, you shrink it, it will have a tendency to pull this rib in possibly and make it crooked. So that's the reason for these braces. The manual kind of has that wrong. It used to be they said install it. Well, then you try to put your tanks in, you got to kind of push this rib out to get the tanks in. Well, then you had to unhook it. So I told them to not do that. So they put a note in the manual not to put this part in yet until after you put your fuel tanks. Really, it's the opposite. You got to put this top in because it actually takes a little screw and a nut which goes on this side, and it's impossible to get to if you wait to do it till after your fuel tanks are in. So the note in my forum, you'll see it says install this end first and just leave the back sides off. You just leave them dangling. You can mark where they're going to go, but we're just going to drill a little number 40 hole in there, and then we just got some little self-tapping screws that we're just going to stick into the web spar there to hold the backside. But don't do it until after you put your fuel tanks in, because you actually have to say, you have to kind of tuck the tanks in here and push a little bit. And then on this end, we've got some fittings here for our fuel gauges and fuel lines and so forth, and they have to go over here too, and it's at an angle and sticking out. So you kind of pull this a little bit and you kind of push that a little bit, get them in. And once you get those in, then you can connect your brace on there. As we go down through here, you can see here that how the false spar sits in here. It actually overlaps here, and this is where we're going to be drilling this into the sides of the spar. Okay, so you can see the spar cap here. Well, if you look in the manual, it shows you the inside of it, and you can look at it at the end of the spar if you want to see it before you start. Look at the end of the spar, and you'll see that bulb that's in there. That's a lot of strength, I guess, in that bulb. So we don't want to drill in that bulb. We've got a space between the bottom and the top where it's safe to drill. There's a little tool, I've actually loaned it to someone right now. There's a little tool that goes in the bottom of the spar, and it already has pre-drilled holes or places, and you can hold that there and drill the hole through it and make sure that you're missing that bulb in that spar. But they have pre-drilled these holes. See here, the skin comes over, It's the same thing on all these skins here. All your nose skins are the same way. Those pre-drilled holes will work perfectly as long as you make sure that the bottom of this metal of the skin is flush with the bottom of the spar. So just make sure. I'd actually take a clamp like this, and I take it and I put it, and it's a strong one. I put it just like that, making sure it's in that way it holds the bottom of the metal flush with the bottom of the cap. So that way you know it's flush. I still reach up underneath, you can feel it and make darn sure, and then I drill that hole. I don't use my tool anymore because I've got a lot of confidence that this has all been good. But like I say, I still feel it and make sure it's right. And then I drill the center ones first. And that way if there's any rippling, you know, then I drill that one, for example, then I'll put my hand on that, push it flat, and make sure when I get that last one drilled, it keeps it tight and flush in there. Okay. On these, we're still talking about those nut plates we had to add. It's kind of a little confusing, but the figure shows it pretty good, and I explain it real good in the form manual. This one we add in this corner, these are for the, again, for the fuel tank covers. Okay, we're gonna put in last. The fuel tank cover, I brought them over here. And the reason I brought them over here is now, the manual later in the finish manual will address this. But they have pre-installed these little round covers on them, okay? It used to be they cut the hole and then you could fit this cover, this little round cover, you could fit it later, okay? But now they're pre-installing that. So what happens is these fuel tanks, you can move them around a little bit, all right? Left and right and back and forward. You don't wanna, you're gonna have to match drill. You're gonna put that cover in place. It pretty much goes flush with the outside of this and goes over. You just lay it on there and you make sure it's lined up with all the nut plates, both sides, clamp it down, and then we're gonna match drill holes later. I'll do it right before I paint, but after all the fabric's on. We're gonna match drill holes, and then we're gonna put screws down through the cover into these nut plates. Well, if you don't wanna do it now, because when you pull this fabric, it's still gonna move stuff just a little bit. So don't drill those holes out until your cover is installed and the fabric has been shrunk, okay? So before I put a final deal on these fuel, I brought these over because I put the fuel tanks in, then I put the cover on. Then I look and see how this is centered. Not a big deal, but it's just when you look at it, I want it to be right, to be centered inside that hole that they've already got in the cover. So with the cover sitting where it's all nice and the way it should be, then I slide these fuel tanks around. Then I make a little mark. I've already cleaned it, but I take a little mark with a Sharpie and I just put a mark across here and across here, then one this way. So then I know as I'm tightening down these bolts and stuff on the fuel tanks, I just move the tanks, make sure they stay there. And that way later when you put your fuel tank on, it'll be centered nicely in that hole. If you don't, it might be over to one side or the other. Again, it'll always fit, it's not a big deal. I just like everything to be pretty symmetrical. So on this one here, you see, we're gonna run a ruler across here and draw a line, and it's gonna be in line with these, okay? But on this side, it's not gonna be in line with these nut plates here. These nut plates are going to be on the inboard side coming down here. So it would be here. For some reason, I don't really know why, but they want this corner nut plate to be here. So it's in line with this, but in line with these rivets, not with that on this side. And that's up here at the top, it's the same thing. It's in line with the rivet line here and not with the nut plate line, okay? And then again, this one is in line with these, same thing on that corner. But then on this one, the outboard one, it is gonna align with these rivet lines. So it's the inboard double rib is gonna come down through here and align with that. So that's the 4 extra nut plates you have to install yourself. These are the cushion strips. You'll get some of this. This is just the squishy cushion. I go ahead and put them on now. I'll just leave these top covers on. This is nothing but these are just some little foam weather strip cushions where the tank won't rattle when you put it on there, even though it won't anyway, but you put a strip on either side. This is all gonna be covered here when you go to paint, so you're keeping the paint out, but I just stick it on now. Let's see, so go back and we installing all the center ribs. And you will notice that that you've got your double rib here on 1, you got a double rib on 3, and you got a double rib on 5, number 5. The best thing to do is walk along and just get you a Sharpie, mark right on the spar cap. 1, 2, you see the 2 false rib down there at the bottom. 2, 3, 4, 5, and just go right on down the line, mark them. So as you're working on something where the manual might say go to rib number 8, you know, and whatever, you can easily see where rib 8 is. Okay, so center ribs are all gone in. One thing you want to note is when you do the tail rib, the first tail rib and the first cap nose rib, that those are actually for the left wing. They're turned opposite. If you look at all the rest of these, probably can't see it, but all the rest of these nose ribs on the front are for a left wing, and they're turned with the open side on this side and the flat side on that side. Later, we're going to put a real nice piece of trim piece. You're going to see this in the cockpit. In fact, that's where I store all my rags and stuff for cleaning. But it'll be a black, real nice black finish piece that's going to go across here. It'll be flush. So that's why these are both turned so that the flat side is facing this side, because later we'll have a pretty black vinyl trim piece that we'll install in there, and those are visible from in the cockpit. But you'll remember, just pay attention. This first nose rib and the first tail rib is a -002, which is a right wing. This is a left wing. So it'll be the opposite wing for the first one only. Then the rest of them will be the 001s. Rest of them here will be the 001s, okay? And you'll pay attention. Most of the center ribs are the same rib, except for a couple that are different down here. As we get down to the end here, then you can see that we've got cap strips. And what these little cap strips do is combine. This is a machined rib that we're going to add on the back side here. These are the ones with the hard rivets to put in here, the Cherry Maxes. These are the two that are going to be the most hard to get to. Here's one on this one. There's one on this machined rib here. This is where the flap will connect, and then the aileron will start here. It'll go to that second one. It'll have a hanger here. This is where your cable will come down through, attached to the top of the aileron. Then the aileron will come down here, attached to here. It's 51 1/8 inches from here to dead center. 51 1/8. You want that dead nuts. Then from here to there is going to be 51 1/8 plus a couple of washers, because we're going to have some more washers down here. So as long as you got this fixed, then when you get ready to set this, just like the manual shows you, you're going to install the aileron. If you want, I quit installing the aileron. I don't do that anymore. Like this 51 1/8, and then the width of 2 washers comes back out. So the caps are like this. You can see this is the number 12 rib. We've got a Cherry Max here, same at the bottom. Diagrams show you all that. It's kind of a little confusing, but you're going to have 2 on this side with 1 on the top. Same with the bottom. So you got 2 Cherry Max bottom, 2 Cherry Max top on the sides, 1 Cherry Max flush top. Same thing on the bottom. Same thing up here. Got this little cap. Where we go? Right here. Well, you actually can't see this one. This cap, this little cap, is between this cap strip. Okay, so it's there and there. The manual has a whole section on installing these cap strips. That's this little piece that goes above this double rib here. And it shows you exactly. I show you very detailed in the manual about where to locate these holes and drill them. In the manual, last note I made, if you notice, all these holes that are pre-drilled everywhere, those are for your fabric rivets. So instead of stitching, if you're going to use rivets instead of stitching, then all these holes. Well, it's just nice, excuse me, when you finish, that everything lines up right. So that you look down the wing, you got all your lines or rivets right. So what I always do is look and see, is everything lined up? Well, we're adding this cap strip, and the manual says I did it just like they showed it. They showed to have this hole right here put in, okay? And later to put a hole here for the cover. But when you look, this whole row of rivets is right, see, just right off the spar cap back here all the way down the line. So why would they do this? So I actually think that this one that they call for a rivet, I would move it over here and I would drill this hole in here. So that's what I did. I drilled an extra hole just so I can have this rivet line up with this. Now these are rivet holes which are countersunk from underneath of this piece here. If you look up there and here, they're max drilled from the bottom. Same thing with these. After we put the rivets in here, these holes we drilled by going underneath this one and max drilling up from the holes that were already just like these in this rib up through here to get ours. You put a straight edge all the way across these, all these holes should be the same. So these holes you're drilling are coming from that rib, so they'll be identical. Let's see. The false spars, they're pretty easy. You just pretty much just putting them up into place. We're marking a line on the center of our tail ribs. Just take a blue marker and I just kind of hold it with my hand and give me a spacing, and I just run it down the line like that. Put me a nice blue, heavy blue Sharpie mark down on these. Also down the backs in there. And you don't have to do the bottom because you can see it. But when you're putting this in place, like here's a tail rib, you look through the hole and you move it around until you see the blue mark, and you know that's the center of the rib. So you just kind of reach and hold it and drill this hole and put that rivet in there. Same thing, you know, coming down this side and then on the bottom side too. Same thing. You can look back under. You can look on these sides here and you can see you can just reach your hand up in there and move that tail rib around and be sure you're seeing the center of that blue line in there. Okay, so anyway, that's kind of a walk around. The trammeling of these, I go in pretty good detail. In fact, there's a separate video just on doing that, so I won't talk about that anymore. I just thought I'd show you some of the things and talk about some of the stuff. These pieces here, this cap strip, this is reinforcement. It goes in the rear spar. I go into a lot of detail in the form about that. If you look at that, it's my explanation is a lot easier than the manual. This is very important. It's done after it's trammeled and locks this wing in. These little pieces are a real pain. That's why this piece, this reinforcement piece, these were added just to the EX3 to give it more strength here. And you know, that's why we're going to leave. We're not going to, this is the 8 and 9 rib. We're not going to put this rivets in here and here, here and here, or on the back side, or put these 2 tail ribs in yet, because we're going to have to slide this over to get away from all of this. See, to get down in there and install these. So that's why we're leaving the rivets off of here. We're leaving the bottom rivets off of this one over here, because later you'll see we have to get up underneath there to install a nose rib. So I'll tell you that in my forum post as well. That's in there. The manual is pretty good now. I'm putting the wingtip bow on. Just be sure you're measuring. I believe it was 12 and something inches. That's from the back side of the false spar to here. So you'll just push this up or down until you get that distance from here to here. That's so it lines up with your aileron coming back in here. There should be a gap here. That's going to end up being a hole in the fabric there for drainage. This is the crossbar that's going in. Underneath here, it's underneath here. We're pre-drilling the hole and putting rivets in here, putting rivets top and bottom on this tail rib here that we had to install. Here we're just using glue underneath here. We're using the methyl crylate glue. You can see here, we're stacking it up. Okay, there's the wire, just kind of close to the hole. I'll leave that closed up. I won't put it out. I'll leave it in there. When I get done painting and ready, I'm just gonna cut it out here and pull it out of here. Rivet here and here. Just take this wingtip flush up there. Should be flush around here. I take my hand on the inside. I push it real hard back that way. These holes are pre-drilled now in the ones I just got, but if not, you can mark them. And then just install the ribs. There are two here, there's one on the bottom. And then we're gonna put glue on the inside. That last nose rib is here, so the space is here. You just take that methyl chrylite glue, put it all around there, stuck it up in there, and pull your rivets. So rivet that side, go back to there, set it to that side, and then glue it, and away you go. And the leading edge, I got several videos on doing the leading edges, so I won't go over that, but you can see it there. Can't think of anything else, but I just thought I'd kind of go over that and show you the finished wing before we get started on the next one.